Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. We are back once again to continue our WrestleMania series, the latest installment being WrestleMania 37, which took place on April 10th, April 11th, 2021, in Tampa, Florida, at Raymond James Stadium. If you recall, this is the stadium it was supposed to take place at last year, that is until COVID happened. The announced attendance, the combined attendance of both nights was 40,806. We get a quick introduction to WrestleMania from Vince McMahon and all of the talent in the back. He reminds the WWE Universe that they are most important part of the business, while we see the crowd a little more distant than usual, all wearing face masks as well. But regardless, very refreshing to see the fans back in attendance. And this was actually the first event where fans were back in attendance since COVID kind of shut the world down, but it wasn't quite ready yet. We start off the WrestleMania with a rain delay, and Byron Saxton says, and this is one of the few times I will quote the man, he says, "We waited this long. What's a few minutes longer?" So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into WrestleMania 37. Per usual, we'll go through every single match. Kind of give you our thoughts on it, and then we'll give you our overall thoughts both on night one or WrestleMania Saturday and night two and WrestleMania Sunday, whichever you prefer. Um, I prefer the WrestleMania Saturday. So WrestleMania Saturday kicks off with Drew McIntyre going up against Bobby Lashley, with MVP defending that WWE Championship. KP, thoughts on this opening contest of WrestleMania Saturday?
What a way to start off, right? WWE Championship on the line. Yeah, not many bigger matches that you're going to kick things off for a double WrestleMania weekend. I might have a bit of a hot take on this matchup, and I'll get to that in a couple of moments. But this honestly isn't a bad match. It's very hard hitting. You know, it's a very physical affair between both men. It's got that sort of like big fight feel to it. The feud was a little bit weird going into this one. Obviously, you had the Miz and the WWE Championship, the cash in, all that kind of stuff. And that sort of like spirals into Bobby Lashley taking control of the championship, Drew chasing it, trying to get it back. Obviously, having gone through a large part of the year with that championship after last year's WrestleMania, basically just sort of being the standard of the COVID era, I think, was Drew McIntyre. Something that he still really hasn't got back to this day. But in all honesty, you know, he carried the company for quite some time during that year. I feel like he carried this match as well. I really, really do. He put on an absolutely stellar performance, probably one of his best individual performances in probably his WWE career, I would say. He allowed Lashley to coast through this matchup. It made his work extremely easy for him. Like I said, it was physical. Both had, their opportunity to do things here and there, but it was predominantly just controlled by McIntyre for the most part of it. He even showed some technical flair. We saw some submission moves, some really nice transitions, proper wrestling graps. Yeah, it was just a clinic from McIntyre. It was a crazy performance from him from a personal sense. The finish was a little bit botched. I'll get to that now. So we do see Drew looking for a Claymore on Lashley. He hasn't hit one in the matchup until this point, and he still doesn't hit one. As he goes to lay the Claymore down onto Lashley, he's sort of distracted by MVP, albeit a bit delayed sort of thing. It's a bit of an awkward moment. McIntyre goes to run forward. I think you can actually see McIntyre saying now to MVP just before he weighs up the Claymore. And MVP sort of reacts really, really late. And as McIntyre goes to run forward, he sort of has to stop in his tracks. And then you sort of hear MVP just sort of shout something. And it's a really weird distraction sort of angle here that just isn't implemented very well. Maybe it was a good idea on paper, but execution was pretty poor. Either way, though, regardless, you know, McIntyre is distracted by the whatever you want to call that, and that allows Lashley to lock in the Hurt Lock. After quite some struggle, Lashley has this locked in for probably a good minute and a half or so. McIntyre trying, a couple of ways to get out of the hold and whatever. Doesn't manage to do so. Lashley really locks it down, and Drew McIntyre fades out for Lashley to walk away still as your WWE champion. I think most people did think that McIntyre was winning this matchup going into it, but Lashley did go on to have a pretty solid reign with the championship afterwards. But I do think this was at the early stages where he didn't really sort of settle in too quickly. You could see that Lashley wasn't quite on the same level as Drew McIntyre in this matchup. The levels of class were so vastly different. And considering McIntyre wasn't the champion at the time, he performed like the WWE champion, and that just shows the level that he was at throughout the months building up to this one. Just the past year or so prior to it, having that championship reign. And you can see that Lashley was still sort of like trying to settle into the role of the champion. But not Lashley's best performance, but it was incredible from Drew. It's a weird one. I don't remember seeing many matches like this where one man is so vastly better than the other that it kind of works into a decent matchup regardless. It's a bit strange, but I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. It's a pretty good way to start off WrestleMania weekend. It's just, I would have loved to have seen a bit more from Lashley, a bit more physical, a bit more just really settling into that WWE champion role. Maybe it came a little bit too early for him. Maybe, I don't know, it was nerves being back on the the audience, having the fans back in attendance. I'm not sure, but I don't think it really clicked for Lashley in this contest. But McIntyre was fantastic. What a performance from him. 7.5 from me. What did you rate this one, Nick? Do you agree with my assessment there? Do you think it was sort of like a tale of two men in this matchup, or am I a bit over thinking this one?
Yeah, I thought you perfectly described the match as being a big match. Obviously, with the two men here, neither of which, in my opinion, really fight like big men. Obviously, Drew's repertoire is better than that of Lashley. Um, but neither of them fight when I think of a stereotypical big man fight. Neither of them kind of fit that bill, at least for me. But yeah, I thought this match was good, hard hitting, and got a lot of time, close to 20 minutes. The ending, I didn't pick up on the now bit, but then again, I'm partially deaf, so that kind of comes with the territory. I didn't pick up on that, but even so, like the finish the way it was, it made Drew look kind of dumb. Like, oh, I heard someone shout my name in a stadium full of, 20,000 people. I'm gonna stop what I'm doing, and then that ends up costing them the match. I didn't love that. Thought that made him look kind of dumb. And you mentioned perfectly, Drew carried the men's division, kind of the Bailey of the men's division, if you will. Both of them had really good COVID eras, and just absolutely went crazy in terms of how good they were booked. But that advantage is all it took for Bobby to lock in the Hurt Lock, which props to them. They sold that quite well. Drew fought it off for as long as he could, but didn't actually tap out. Just got the match got called due to the unresponsiveness. So really selling the Hurt Lock there, but still your WWE champion Bobby Lashley. Thought this was a really good contest and a great way to kick off WrestleMania Saturday. I gave this one an 8 out of 10. And just a really quality performance. I don't know if I thought bad, or I don't know if I thought that Bobby was, bad or lacked moveset compared to Drew. I think Drew is just on another level. So to an extent, I would agree with you though. With that, we'll go ahead and get into the second contest, which is the tag team turmoil match. Kind of a pro and con here. Obviously, you have with the two nights, you have something you can do like this, where you can. We've seen it, since then as well, where you can book something on night one, and then however, depending on the result of that one, you can then book something on night two. It's a bit of a double-edged sword for me, in that the point of the two nights for one of the best reasons I like it is because you can put more people on the card. So yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword there for me. But regardless, the winner of this match gets a shot at the Women's Tag Team Championships tomorrow on night 2 of WrestleMania 37. KP, thoughts on this match?
Yeah, this one's a bit of an interesting one because you do have 5 teams, despite the graphic on the screen there. So with 5 teams, you're going to have to really go through all of them, in a sense that it's difficult to really give them all the amount of time that they're going to need to really tell a story in this matchup, or to really implement how things are going to go. It's a lot. Obviously, with the gauntlet style rules here with tag team turmoil, you obviously have to start with one team facing another, and then obviously you get the other teams coming on in afterwards, and then it's going to be a bit of a long old haul, unless you sort of rush through the matches. And that's kind of what they did in elements with this one. It wasn't the best match that you'll ever see. It was kind of meh, to be honest. It did feel really rushed for the duration. I understand it. They've got 5 teams to go through here. They have to get them all involved. They have to, meet the quota for the rest of the night. And they can't try and overrun things. But because of how rushed it was, it did have a bit of a sloppiness to it in parts. It wasn't the cleanest contest. and was mainly just a way of getting a lot of women on the card, in a sense that, you just throw all these teams in, and then you can book the winners in a proper match the following night. So I kind of get it. Like you said, it is a double-edged sword. You are giving loads of people opportunity here to be on the stage, but at the same time, it's coming at the sort of expense of, maybe a solid matchup that you could be seeing instead of that one. So it's a bit of a weird one. I do think, however, in this matchup, the Riott squad probably impressed the most. That'd be Liv Morgan and Ruby Riott. They look pretty good, to be fair, in their time in the matchup. Like I say, there wasn't a lot of quality here, but I do think that they sort of brought a sense of class to this matchup. And then Natalya and Tamina at the end, sort of like sharing their experience levels and just sort of like rounding off the contest. Yeah, I think there weren't good elements here, but it didn't feel like that for the whole time, though. Starting off, let me just quickly go through a rundown of how we got from start to finish. We would kick things off with Naomi and Lana and Billie Kay and Carmella. It would actually be Kay and Mella that would eliminate Naomi and Lana, as Billie rolls up Naomi, and thanks to Carmella's feet on Kay's back, has enough leverage to get the elimination. We then see the Riott squad coming on in. They eliminate Billie Kay and Carmella. Kay and Mella attempt to do the same thing as they did before with their first elimination, but this time they are seen by the referee. Liv hits Kay with a double knees to the face and then holds her in place before Ruby Riott hits a diving senton to get the elimination from them. Carmella, a little bit salty afterwards, does attack the Riott squad post-elimination, sort of like delivers a super kick and just knocks them down. We then see Dana Brooke and Mandy Rose coming on down next. This is an infamous slip that is actually removed from the coverage of WrestleMania from Mandy Rose. She's making her way down the ramp, obviously still having the effects of the rain earlier on in the night. And we see Mandy hit Liv with a superplex before Dana lands a swanton bomb. Dana goes to pin Liv, and Liv reverses it at 2 and ends up pinning Dana Brooke to then bring down Tamina and Natalya for the final matchup of this tag team Turmoil contest. It is won in the end by Natalya and Tamina, as they sort of like take down the Riott squad with a heart attack. That's on Ruby Riott, and then Tamina gets tagged in, hits a Superfly splash to get the victory. They will take on the team of Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax on night 2 for those women's tag team championships. But I've already gone through what I said. It wasn't the cleanest. It was a bit rushed. It wasn't fantastic, but it got names involved and it set up a match for night 2. So, pros and cons, bits and butts here and there. I gave it a 6 out of 10. I feel like that's probably fair based on how this one went down. I wish it could have been better, but, if you're going to deliver this one to be a really good contest, it's going to have at least another, 7 or 8 minutes across the course of each match, each of the matches. Yeah, it's a weird one. It's hard to get this one on down to a T, and I don't think they really nailed it either. Nick, what did you make of this one? It's a little bit messy in parts, but did you like it for what it was? Do you think it served a good purpose? And what did you make of Tamina and Natalya getting the win?
Split down the middle, similar to you. Like, had aspects that was good, had aspects that were quite good. Obviously, the Riott squad barring out the best team throughout this match, and looked like a proper team. And honestly, that's because half the team, well, almost all of the teams in here are makeshift tag teams. So the women's tag division, not quite what it is, what we think of it today. That is for certain. But yeah, Riott Squad, obviously the only really good looking team here. Natalya and Tamina look decent as well, I will say. But just that's kind of, they're the only ones that had been together, the Riott Squad. So, it is kind of what it is to be expected. Unfortunately, I think they just kind of got a bit of a bad draw. They did the best with what they could. And then, yeah, those the slippery conditions were a public enemy number one throughout the night. We see them try to cost many people matches. Mandy is the first of many victims who, either mess up or almost mess up because of those ropes. So I can't imagine. We've heard people say it just continues to get slippier, a bit more slippy as the night goes on. So, and that's under normal conditions, not when it had rained in the arena, and such as the risk you run with open arenas. So, yeah, it could have been better, but Riott Squad obviously being the MVP here, and Natalya and Tamina getting the win will face Nia Jax and Shayna tomorrow night for the Women's Tag Team Champions. For me, rating-wise, gave this one a 5.5 out of 10. Just honestly didn't feel like a WrestleMania match, and that's that kind of feels generous, even that to me. So outside of the Riott Squad, just didn't really have much nice to say about this particular one. So, with that, we'll go ahead and get into the next contest, which is Seth Rollins going up against Cesaro, two very good talents. So, you think this match would be good? KP, was it?
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was pretty good, to be fair. This comes off the sort of culmination of Cesaro being really underrated and finally sort of getting to a stage in his WWE career where he's starting to be really appreciated on a singles level. This was sort of like, sort of like shoot him into bigger opportunities going forward. In fact, I don't think he actually stuck around the WWE too much long after this one. Probably realized his worth and went to other ventures. But to be fair to him, though, he went out and delivered a very good matchup here against Seth Rollins. The kind of guy that you want to go 1-on-1 with at WrestleMania and have a good match with, because that's probably going to happen. And yeah, it was pretty fun, to be fair. We see two different styles. Both are technically sound individuals, but Rollins sort of like having that bit of an edge in agility. That mixed with Cesaro's strong strikes. It had a pretty nice flow to it and was really back and forth. A very hard fought battle, both men having a really good showing throughout, plenty of time in this one. And Cesaro getting the victory here in his first singles match at WrestleMania after 10 years. It's quite the story. For him to actually have had that moment, so far into it, I guess we'll not count like the Andre the Giant Battle Royals, like we're talking like just a one-on-one capacity here. But sort of like, yeah, the fact that it took him this long to do something like this is kind of crazy. He's very much underrated and underappreciated for sure. But it was a really good match. Just not an amazing one, in my opinion. It was good, though. It was solid. We see Cesaro hitting a series of swings earlier in the matchup. I think there's probably about 9 or 10, just in the early stages. And then he goes for his second set of swings once he sort of oversees Seth's attacks and stuff throughout the rest of the matchup. Sort of powers through, gets to a stage where he capitalizes, hits 19 swings, despite what Corey Graves and Michael Cole and all are saying at ringside. It was not what they said. I think they said it was like 24 or something, but it was 19. It was 100% 19. I counted them all just to make sure. They do like to exaggerate them, and the crowd does count a bit quickly as well. But once he hits those 19 swings, he hits his second neutralizer of the contest. Seth Rollins hadn't kicked out the first one earlier on in the matchup, and that'll be enough for him to get the victory here, 1-2-3 over Rollins at WrestleMania. But yeah, I mean, I've always loved Cesaro. I think he's a great talent. I think he's just very clinically sound in the ring. And, when you got someone like Seth, the two just blended well together in this matchup. So, yeah, still rocking the Messiah gimmick here with Seth, and I think it was towards the latter stages of that gimmick. So, he'll get back to proper Seth soon. But yeah, I like this one for what it was. It wasn't amazing, but it was good. It was pretty solid. I gave it a 7 out of 10. So, yeah, not a bad match whatsoever. I quite liked it. Nick, what did you make of this one? How do you rate Cesaro in terms of singles capacity here? Did this match do the job for you? And yeah, what were your overall thoughts?
Yeah, Cesaro is massively underrated, and the writing was apparently on the wall, as you kind of alluded to. By next WrestleMania, Cesaro would no longer be with WWE, which is truly a shame. For whatever reason, he never quite got his footing for the fact that this is his first WrestleMania singles win, in 10 years into his career. I think that kind of says everything because he has it all. The only thing he was struggling with was, the promo side of it. But when you were that good in the ring, we've seen plenty of people that didn't have the promo side of it, not be as good in the ring and make it in the business. So it is unfortunate. This particular match is just, as you mentioned, it's very clean, very sound, as you would probably expect from these two kind of getting in the ring. And Seth has to be dizzy. The number of spins, regardless of the actual number, I think the audience typically counts in seconds, whereas you're counting in rotations. But regardless, the number of times he spent between that and the UFO, like he had to be some sort of dizzy. And Graves and Cole very much sold just how big of a deal Cesaro really is. And honestly, I would have loved to have seen him being taken advantage of earlier in terms of making him into a star. I know they tried much earlier, but I think they really missed it out on an opportunity with him because he was just so sound. It's just such a joy to watch, and obviously, my opinion are very high at that of Seth as well. So we put these two together, you really struggle to kind of mess that up. For me, I gave this one an 8.5 out of 10. Just thought it was a really sound contest and a really fun one as well, and nice to see Cesaro get his comeuppance, even if it was a little too late. With that, getting into the next contest, we have a very unique contest, and that of AJ Styles and Omos going up against Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods of the New Day for those Raw Tag Team Championship. KP, thoughts on this one?
I got this one written down as a match of two halves. I feel like the first half being that, Kofi and Xavier isolate AJ Styles and they sort of do a good job of keeping him in the ring, not allowing the giant Omos to get involved and to, authoritate his power and size. And then we see the second half where Omos does get tagged in and the match proceeds to basically be one-way traffic until the very end. Yeah, it wasn't a great match, to be perfectly honest. It was kind of alright when AJ Styles was going up against the New Day in sort of like a handicap style capacity. But yeah, when it does see Omos come in, it sort of like takes away any sort of, I don't know, competitiveness away from the matchup, and you just don't really see any sort of sense of quality anymore. It's just basically the New Day trying to fight some absolutely monstrous man, and it doesn't obviously work for them in the end. Yeah, I don't know. Like, obviously that's the way it's intended. I get it. Like, I'm not saying that, I don't understand the message they're sending here, but it's just not something that I personally enjoy, and I think that's fair to say. But yeah, it's just not my style contest. Like, it was good up until that point, but yeah, it takes away any sort of energy and sort of enjoyment from the contest. Kofi and Xavier do get overthrown by Omos, who finally gets into the matchup, like I mentioned. Styles actually goes up onto the shoulders of Omos and hits a phenomenal forearm to Xavier Woods. Quite a cool spot, actually. Not the cleanest forearm, but it does look pretty good, to be fair, what he tries. Once that's all said and done, sort of Xavier just goes to ringside and, selling the effects of the phenomenal forearm. Omos then hits a double-handed chokeslam onto Kofi Kingston, and that gives him and Styles the victory, becoming a brand new Raw Tag Team Champions. So yeah, like I said, it's a tale of two halves here, this match, and you go 2-on-1 handicap, and then you do, ironically, a 2-on-1 handicap, but the reverse side of things. So yeah, it's kind of strange when you look at it like that, but it's not the best tag team matchup, if we're being perfectly honest. I gave it a 5.5 out of 10. It's just not something that's for me. Like, maybe people out there do enjoy this one. That's absolutely fair enough. But yeah, it's not something that I personally quite like. So yeah, I don't know. It is what it is, I suppose. Nick, what do you have to say about this one? Do you agree that his assessment of, two handicap matches here, just sort of like tilting the scales back and forth, one half and one half? Do you like the fact that they did what they did here? I don't know. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Let's hear what you got to say.
Match of two halves, I think, is an actually perfect description because on the first half, you have Kofi and Xavier putting on an absolute tag team clinic, reminding us why they are, at the time, 11-time tag team champions at this point in their career. Cutting the ring in half, taunting the big man Omos in the process. Xavier even says, "Look how effective we are being a tag team." Cutting the ring in half. They're just so entertaining. The New Day. They might be one of the most entertaining tag teams in the history of WWE. If you were to ask me, not only can they go in the ring, but they can put a smile on our face in the meantime without skipping a beat. So they are truly special. But yeah, then the second half you have Omos, and neither of us are big men, traditionally speaking. Fans, the very slow moving power, really not our cup of tea, and so it's no shock that either of us would not love this match. And the very hot tag, the very large tag, if you will, to Omos, it kind of does go downhill from there. The beginning of the end for New Day. I did also enjoy that phenomenal forearm off the shoulders, very innovative there. A 5-star classic, absolutely not. But I did like this match. I thought it was fun. And what a job for selling Omos here. Maybe even too much. They do make him look like an absolute beast, though. And I think at this point in his career, I think this was his debut match, if I remember correctly. So it was quite the opening match for sure. But maybe just sold him a little bit too much. I give this match a 6 out of 10. It could have been a lot better, but it was effective for what it was trying to do. With that, getting into the next contest, we have Braun Strowman going up against Shane McMahon in what would be his last WrestleMania in a steel cage match. This is the first steel cage match on the Mania stage since 1986 or WrestleMania 2. KP, thoughts on this one?
This one was pretty fun. Honestly, I quite enjoyed it for the most part. And I tend to say that about most of these Shane McMahon matches, being quite surprised going into them, thinking I'm not going to really enjoy them, but then I do. It's just the kind of thing that he sort of like spins every single time when he's on a WrestleMania matchup. The build for this one being just very, just basic, I guess you could say. Shane just calling Braun Strowman's stupid, and that tends to be essentially how the build just goes for the entire time. We do see at the very start of the matchup here, Elias and Jackson Riker. They sort of get involved and sort of come to the aid of Shane McMahon, attacking Braun on his entrance, laying waste to him with a series of attacks, and then sort of like sending him into the wolves of Shane McMahon, who can sort of like take control for a large part of the opening contest. Yeah, it's a pretty good contest eventually here. It does work out quite nicely. We sort of see some hard-hitting stars. There are weapons involved in this one. Conveniently placed weapons sort of like on top of the cage and like just in bags on the outside, whatever. We see like a metal plate sort of thing just on top of the cage that Shane uses at one point. Steel chair in the ring. There's a toolbox just in one of the bags on the top. And yeah, so it's not just your typical steel cage contest. There are a few little added elements in there. Somewhere in between that and like an Ambrose Asylum or whatever what you want to describe it as type of matchup. But what I will say though is we do see Riker and Elias coming back in on a later stage of the contest. They provide a bit of an inconvenience for Strowman, but Strowman deals with them pretty effectively actually. Sort of like just smashes them through the wall essentially, sending them down onto the floor. And that sort of just gets him one-on-one with Shane McMahon for the rest of the contest. Just sort of seemingly takes them out quite simply. We don't see them again. But even the cage, like it was used quite uniquely in this one. We see Shane looking to escape, and he gets to the top. Braun Strowman's up there with him, and he gets hit with that toolbox, which is inside the bag, which Shane McMahon sort of reveals towards the late stages. Braun gets knocked down onto the canvas. You think that's going to be the end as Shane sort of makes his climb down on the side of the cage. And he sort of goes down really slowly. That allows Braun Strowman enough time to get back up to his feet and to go onto the ropes just opposite Shane, like, you know, on the other side of the steel cage. And what he does is he just literally just starts like poking his fingers through the cage wall. He essentially just rips the cage wall off and he just tears a hole in it. Shane McMahon looking absolutely shocked. The crowd pops for it, to be fair. It's a really unique and cool spot, to be honest, as the monster just absolutely tears through the side of the cage. And he just literally drags McMahon back into the into the structure. And yeah, he gets him up to the top, launches him off of the cage, and then hits a big power slam in order to get the victory here in this matchup. So yeah, it was actually kind of fun. I really liked this one, to be fair. Had a lot going on with it. You obviously had your outside interference, you had your weapons involved, you had a little bit of drama, you had a cool spot at the end. It had a fair few elements which made it a really fun, enjoyable matchup. So yeah, I quite liked it. Maybe a little bit slept on this one, but yeah, I thought it added some variety with everything that went down, and it worked out a treat, to be fair. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. You know, it's not the matchup that on paper I think I would enjoy overly much, but yeah, I came out thinking this one was actually really, really fun, and I quite liked it. So yeah, not a fault for me personally. Nick, what did you make of this one though? Probably not your typical match that you'd love to see, but yeah, did you think the same thing as me? Did you quite like it?
Yeah, we seem to be reading from the same book. At least this entire review so far, pretty close in ratings, but that's really nothing new. I kind of thought, you know, two of the biggest issues I have with Shane McMahon matches are usually they're too long. This one isn't, so that's the one pro, and the other one is how much offense he gets in going up against his opponents. Usually, he's going up against a pretty good opponent. Obviously, Braun is a monster, being built as such. Looks absolutely jacked here too. Like there's no exception, but yeah, I think that one is a bit of a caveat here. They kind of try to nullify that with Zyker and Elias, but even with that ambush, it was a unique decision to have Shane go toe to toe with Braun, even still inside of the steel cage, which is kind of the whole point of this rivalry. Was that Shane kept getting away, being a coward, which I think is a good enough story on its own. I don't think we needed to have Braun fighting for all those stupid people out there, as he so elegantly put it. That's a very Vince decision. It just screams Vince McMahon. But the commentary team do hit on that. And he says, how does Shane continue to work miracles? Because clearly this isn't the first time that he's had to be booked a tad bit stronger than he should have. We that spot with Braun ripping open the cage, that was great. I love that. With Shane seemingly had the match won, and Shane, Braun grabs his hand and rips him through the cage essentially after ripping it open. I thought that was great. from the top of the cage, screaming "Who's stupid now?" as he pushes him down. And then Braun wasn't quite happy enough with that. Hits the power slam, dedicating that move to anyone that's ever called been whoever has been called stupid in their life. Um, yeah, they not my favorite storyline, but a good match nonetheless. I gave this one a 7 out of 10. It was an entertaining contest for it, and yeah, Braun being booked like an absolute monster here, even if they have to throw in because all big men have to be stupid, right? Come on, Vince, do better. With that, we'll go ahead and get into the next contest of the evening, which has John Morrison and The Miz making what has to be one of the most unique entrances in WrestleMania history, going up against Damian Priest and Bad Bunny. KP, thoughts on this one?
Yeah, no kidding with the unique entrance for Morrison and Miz with all the bunnies around. It was I literally forgot what was happening when the bunnies came out, and I was like, "What is going on here?" And then obviously I realized afterwards when Miz and Morrison came out, I was like, "Oh, okay, I get it now." But yeah, it was a really cool matchup. This one, I think, this sort of redefines celebrity involvement in wrestling. You look at the wrestling matches in the past where celebrity guests have been in these contests, and usually they're sort of there for like a little bit of a cameo, a little bit of a bit part, sort of get a bit of a payday, maybe, whatever you want to call it. Bad Bunny changes the game here when it comes to celebrity involvement. He shows that he really worked on being a presence in ring. He tried to hone some skills, tried to get some wrestling moves locked in and locked down, and he puts on a really fun performance. He holds his own, hits some really nice moves from throughout the duration of the contest, and takes a bit of a beating as well. There's nothing that he doesn't do here in this matchup that a regular wrestler wouldn't do. Wouldn't do. So I was very impressed with Bad Bunny here. This sort of like redefines it, like I said, what celebrity involvement can mean in wrestling matches, and we sort of do see bits of that more to this day now, in the modern day. So yeah, thanks to Bad Bunny. What a great guy. More on the match though itself. It was pretty fun. Great display from Bunny as well, especially. Um, but like Priest wasn't in the match very long, and normally, if you look at a celebrity involvement matchup, that would be the opposite. It would be the real wrestler or the actual wrestler being in the match for the majority, and the celebrity being involved very briefly. But actually, it was the opposite here. Damian Priest didn't get involved much at all, but once he did, he looked strong. He was pretty good when he was in there, and he dealt with Miz and Morrison as he could. But yeah, Miz Morrison did a really good job here as well. Like, I have to highlight them too because they did exceptionally well playing to their characters, being the villains here, and just sort of like really trying to sort of like take down Bad Bunny and to stop him getting any momentum. But yeah, whatever they did, Bad Bunny had something for it. There was a really nice move from Bunny at the end with a Bunny Destroyer on the outside to Morrison. That gets a massive pop from the crowd. Miz is in the ring looking absolutely perplexed at the situation. He can't believe what he's seen. Damian Priest is popping all over the place during Bunny's performance of this matchup. He's basically his biggest fan on the apron. Once we do see that Bunny Destroyer from the outside, Bunny actually gets tagged back into the contest and hits a crossbody onto Miz, who is sat on Priest's after being sat on Priest's shoulders. And that'll be enough for him and Priest to get the victory here in this matchup as a tag team. But yeah, just really, really fun. Solid match. Pretty clean throughout. Had really nice spots. The crowd was great for it. Bad Bunny had a great matchup. Everyone looked solid. Everyone did their part. What's there left to say? It was just really good. It wasn't your greatest contest ever. Like, there wasn't a massive amount of drama or anything, but for a solid tag team matchup, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I gave it an 8 out of 10. Really, really fun match, and had a great time watching it. Up until now, my match of the night. But yeah, Nick, what did you make of this one? How do you feel about Bunny's performance? Do you agree that it changed the sort of like the way we look at celebrities in the ring, sort of thing? I think he made them, have a sense of responsibility. Maybe if they're going to come on in, put in some effort, and do a good job, and you can do something like this. What did you make of it?
Yeah, of course it did. We've seen celebrities come in and do a good job since then too. And he definitely changed what we think of when we think of a celebrity performance. Bad Bunny has this isn't his last appearance either, and he was just as good in his other performance as well. That Bunny Destroyer obviously being the highlight of the match, but yeah, you put them with the likes of John Morrison and The Miz, who are obviously massively both underrated and consistent talents. The Miz especially, absolutely great at character work and just great tag team to have them go up against. Obviously, Damian Priest is very new to the roster at this point, so for him to not get most of the in-ring time was just kind of crazy on its face. So yeah, this was a ton of fun, and I think once again kind of begs the question, why haven't we seen Bad Bunny back in WWE? Obviously, he's a very busy man, just having headlined the Super Bowl this last year. So a very busy man he is, but I think we will see him eventually back in WWE because every single one of his performances are top notch. For me, I gave this one a 7 out of 10. Just a ton of fun and a great tag team match. We then get into our main event of WrestleMania Saturday. The Royal Rumble winner, Bianca Belair, the EST, going up against Sasha Banks for the SmackDown Women's Championship. KP, thoughts on main event of WrestleMania Saturday?
Yeah, the second time women have main evented the WrestleMania stage, and honestly, by far the better matchup of the two. This one was insane. It was unbelievable. Just a real clinic between both women who are absolutely exceptional in their own right when it comes to in-ring performances. I'm not the biggest Sasha fan, but I can appreciate what she does in the ring is very, very good. Bianca Belair, this is sort of like a coming of age moment, I think, on the main roster. We'd seen her, in the past year or so, sort of like making a name for herself on the main roster, but this was her really big moment to really shine and stand out, and she did that tremendously. Yeah, okay, the occasion got to her a little bit at the start of the matchup. She got a bit emotional. It's a very big moment, the two black women main eventing, a PLE WrestleMania. It's honestly historic as hell. So it's amazing for both these ladies in this matchup, and Bianca did show signs of that. But that just shows how human she is, how much she appreciates it, and how much she wanted to put on a really good performance here. And she did that absolutely 100%. They both did. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this one. A really, really good main event. Absolutely solid. Both ladies were excellent. And they put on a showcase. Both of them did. Yeah, both sort of like combined really well here. They just gelled together. You had a mix of experience levels. Obviously, Sasha having so much experience, being one of the top women on the roster for some time, and Bianca, sort of like I've already mentioned, glossing over that one at the earlier stages of her main roster career. But yeah, I thought they combined their levels of experience as well as their roles in the matchup. It just made for a really great contest. Very back and forth, high quality, high class. And obviously, Bianca getting the victory here in this matchup eventually by defeating Sasha made for a fantastic moment for her on the WrestleMania stage. The hair whip at the end was nasty as hell. So Bianca slashes Sasha with a whip of her hair and gets Banks up for a quick KOD. After a little bit of back and forth, they sort of transition really nicely here. Bianca sort of like lifts Sasha back up again. And this time she does hit the KOD really, really quickly, just gets her up there and lands it. And yeah, she lands that move, gets the 1-2-3, and walks out of WrestleMania as the main event winner, as your SmackDown Women's Champion here at the end of night one. But it was a truly great Mania match, an absolute instant classic. It was phenomenal. Probably one of my favorite women's matches of all time, generally speaking. It's just a great, great one-on-one matchup. I give this one a 9.5 out of 10. It's very close to being a perfect contest. And yeah, it's absolutely well deserving of being a WrestleMania main event, which is fantastic. Nick, what did you make of this one? I've sort of like glossed it, but rightfully so here. I think it deserves all the praise in the world. It's a very good matchup. Do you agree with how good it is? And yeah, what were your thoughts about these two women and the moment that they made on the WrestleMania stage?
Yeah, of course, I agree. Obviously, a very, very big fan of Bianca, and this kind of really solidified that for me on the main roster. Um, Sausage biggest problem during this match is how to take away Bianca's biggest advantage, and that is her power game. So Sasha kind of brings out a more vicious side and a very clean match from Sasha. Obviously, people love or hate Sasha. I've usually been on more on the love side, but I think at the end of her career in WWE, I was kind of in the middle because for as much history as Sasha did make, she was never the cleanest. She never put on the cleanest matches. I think that's pretty fair to say. But one of the things she does in this match is manipulate one of Bianca's greatest weapons, that is her braid. And I think people kind of don't like the emotion shown in this. I think it gave away the ending. I would disagree. I think just the fact that, Bianca, this is her first WrestleMania, and to main event on her first WrestleMania, the only other person that's done that in WWE is Brock Lesnar. So make of that what you will. Obviously in very high regard there. Um, This is just an incredible matchup and history making. And even Sasha was struggling with the emotion too. Just a big stage, and if we were in a similar position, obviously we would be emotional as well. I've never had any issues with that. Honestly, it makes it more real to me, and I've always kind of appreciated them for being so vulnerable on such a big stage. Bianca hits that 450 splash, but it isn't enough, and then that causes Bianca to hit that braid, which has always been an absolute favorite move of mine. So unique. I'm glad they don't overuse it because when they do use it, it becomes a very, very big deal. The EST winning here with a KOD, and your new SmackDown Women's Champion is Bianca Belair. What a moment that Welt let down Sasha appears almost instantly. Such a historic moment, no matter how bad Cole absolutely butchered the call at the end. Quite a shame, but not the last of the weekend, but the first true passing of the torch from Sasha to Bianca here. An incredible moment and just one of my favorite women's matches as well. Just not in WrestleMania, just of all time. I give this one a 10 out of 10 and a great way to end WrestleMania Saturday. So with that, WrestleMania Saturday was a very quality night, in my opinion. Um, but we do have two nights, or WrestleMania Sunday, however you want to look at that. So we'll go ahead and get into WrestleMania Sunday, and then at the end, we'll kind of give an average of each night and kind of talk about which night we preferred over the other. But the first contest that starts off WrestleMania Sunday is Randy Orton going up against The Fiend with Alexa Bliss. KP, thoughts on this one to open up WrestleMania Sunday?
This one is hard to look back on. It's very, very tough to look back on. I was watching the entrance to this one, and obviously having already watched this one, live during the time it was aired, I was almost sick to my stomach watching the entrance for the Fiend Bray Wyatt. Like, it's such a cool entrance. They did it really well. The presentation is fantastic, and just sort of like the coming back of the proper Fiend. It was really well done. I liked it. And then the match started, and then it ended, and it was god awful. It just sort of like destroyed everything that was good about it. This was basically their latest attempt to destroy the Fiend and everything that it was worth. I don't really understand what Vince's problem was against this character, but he tried his damnedest to bury it on every level he could. This is the latest and probably one of the final nails in the coffin, to be fair. But yeah, it was a disappointing match and a disappointing result in the end. It starts off quite intense, quite hard hitting, but it does sort of slow down as Randy works down the Fiend. And, we've obviously discussed Randy in the past, and he does that sort of, he has that sort of style with his matches. This is one where I 100% agree with you, Nick, on that one, and I think he did slow it down a little bit too much. They have a little back and forth as the action goes to ringside, but the match does end quite quickly and shockingly before it really gets, properly interesting. The Fiend's gimmick was essentially ignored, like I mentioned. He sort of like Vince's attempt to bury this guy. But his gimmick was essentially ignored because Randy wins from one finisher. We do see elements of it in the early stages. I think Randy hits a hangman DDT, vintage Randy Orton, as Cole would say. And the Fiend does get up very quickly, but we've seen him do that so often with big moves. But for some reason in this match, he didn't with the RKO. And I don't understand that. Maybe it was just to protect the RKO, although people have kicked out of it many times before this, so I'm not entirely sure what the reason was. But regardless of the fact, it kind of does discredit the Fiend and what he was sort of like doing character-wise up until this point. The finish was just extremely illogical, and it's such a waste. Honestly, such a waste. Let's talk a bit more about the finish. So, the Fiend is about to hit a Sister Abigail onto Randy Orton until flames spark up from the ring posts. Before the match starts, I'm just going back a bit here. The entrance for the Fiend, Alexa comes down, Firefly Funhouse, gimmick for her. There's a big Jack in the Box. She sort of like, just cranks the handle and brings the Fiend back up, after having been burnt alive by Randy Orton months before, out of the box. Alexa, when Bray is going for the Sister Abigail, the Fiend, whatever, she just appears out of this box when the flames start sparking from the ring posts, and Alexa Bliss rises. She's sort of got like black liquid dripping all over her head. We've seen this in the past in the build up to this contest. but there's a bit more of it this time. It's all over Alexa's face, drips down her body, and it's just a weird, eerie image. The crowd are popping for it. They're chanting, holy shit, this is awesome, whatever. And it is cool in the moment, but because of what's happening, the Fiend gets distracted. He just looks up at Alexa Bliss, who's just doing some sort of like hand signals. No one's entirely certain what it means, and then Randy just hits an RKO out of absolutely nowhere and just covers Fiend for the win. To this day, I don't know what they were doing. Like, there's no payoff from this. Like, I don't get it. Randy just came off of being WWE champion, a number of months before this, very briefly against Drew McIntyre, before losing it back to him. And then they throw him in this feud, and then they just have him bury the Fiend on the WrestleMania stage. This was a match that the Fiend absolutely should have won. How they had this finish authorized, I have absolutely no idea, because to this day it makes no sense still. I did some research afterwards, just in case I forgot, and I could not find a solid answer as to why they went down this route. Maybe backstage stuff, I don't know. I'm not going to go into that. But yeah, I hate it. I just absolutely can't stand what they did to this character, who was absolutely awesome. They ruined it, and they buried it. 4 out of 10 from me. Maybe that's generous, I'm not sure. But my God, it's such a waste. Nick, what did you make of this? I've had my say. Here's your chance. What have you got?
Yeah, this is unfortunate because what was really cool entrance, some really cool visuals. Obviously, the ending there with Alexa, very cool visuals. But that's kind of where the good ends. The actual match is not a good one. Randy to hit the RKO out of nowhere. This isn't the first time they put on a bad match at WrestleMania. For some reason, WWE just really struggles with booking of the Fiend, and obviously he's a very unique character. But I don't think it's really that difficult. I don't think it was as hard as they made it out to be. Maybe there were just some creative differences, and this is kind of the middle grounds. I don't know. I have a hard time thinking they couldn't have done a better job of this. The crowd obviously sharing our opinions. They're booing very, very loudly after this one. And I don't blame them one bit. It's just it's a shame because what it could have been will always kind of be there. The man got burnt alive, and that was kind of the that you see him on the image there, and then he came back to be the normal Fiend, but then it wasn't enough. He still had to get beat by Randy. So a very strange booking decision. And I gave this one a 3 out of 10. And that's for the visuals alone. Those were pretty cool. But that's kind of really the only positives I have for this one. We'll swiftly move on to the next match because we have Natalya and Tamina, who are getting their second WrestleMania 37 appearance after winning the tag team tag team turmoil match the night before. They're going up against Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler, who are defending their women's tag team championship. KP, thoughts on this one?
Honestly, not bad. Pretty solid. Maybe quite surprising the fact that it was as solid as it was, but I quite enjoyed this one, to be fair. They had absolutely plenty of time, so much time to deliver a solid performance from all 4 women, and they told a little bit of a story in this one. Just Tamina and Nia, the way that they were made a big deal, sort of like them clashing together. They've had a bit of history prior to this one. Yeah, honestly, just quite enjoyed it. Like, the presentation of those two meeting in the ring was quite cool. Then you got like the submission sort of specialists in Natalya and Shayna Baszler. It is sort of like styles meet styles here in this one. Very two similar teams competing in this contest, and they gel quite well together. To be fair, like Nia and Tamina, they basically just have a chance of like trying to outpower the other one. And it makes for quite a back and forth contest. We see everybody getting involved in bits, parts here and there, and a little bit more technical side from Shayna Baszler and Natalya. They come in and have a bit of a display. So yeah, it's almost like a tale of two elements here in this match, which I quite liked to see, to be fair. We obviously had that match up the night before where Natalya and Tamina had a chance to show a little bit of what they could do, but we saw a lot more of what they could do on this matchup, as expected for the Women's Tag Team Championships. What I will say is Shayna and Nia, they look pretty good despite the fact that I think Natalya and Tamina probably looked the stronger team in this one, but no discredit to the Women's Tag Team Champions because they capitalized when they needed to. Natalya is tagged in after Tamina and Nia wear each other down before Shayna tags in as well, whilst Natalya is focused on Nia. Natalya locks in the sharpshooter on Nia Jax before Shayna then gets into the ring and looks for the Kirifuda clutch to make Natalya pass out. That'll be the end of the contest, and still you with tag team champions, Shayna and Nia win this matchup. But yeah, like I said, it was just quite solid. There wasn't really anything bad about it. It was a nice match, had plenty of time, did a pretty decent job of showcasing all 4 women, and made the women's tag team titles quite a big deal because they had a pretty big matchup for it. So yeah, wasn't like your all-time classic or anything like that, but it was still very good and enjoyable. I really liked it. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. Solid matchup between four ladies, and yeah, in terms of the women's tag team titles, probably one of the better matches that we've seen on the WrestleMania stage. So I'm all good with that one. Nick, what did you make of this? Probably not your go-to match on paper, but actually in the ring, I quite enjoyed it. Can you say the same thing?
Yeah, on paper, definitely not a match I would look for in being really good, but it was better than I kind of assumed it would be. It is a bit sloppy here and there, but sometimes that kind of works in with to their advantage. Obviously, like Shayna's style is very kind of realistic and kind of hard hitting, and so I do like that aspect of it. I think it makes it feel a bit more gritty, or feels more like a fight than a match, and I think that does kind of work here. Um, yeah, I think this is probably the most over Tamina's ever been with Natalya here, and she gets her WrestleMania moment. Kind of, and that she's on it. She won her match on night one or WrestleMania Saturday, but not quite enough to get the win on this night. Shayna obviously getting the win with the Kiributa clutch, and Shayna. Every time I see Shayna on a big stage, I think what could have been, but a separate conversation for another video. But yeah, I thought her kind of getting in, locking in that computer clutch as Nia was locked in the sharpshooter. I thought that was kind of a cool finish as well. And as you mentioned, it's got I think close to 15 minutes, so a decent contest, definitely better than I would have pegged it out to be. But yeah, it's still your women's tag team champions, Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler, who did work really well together as well. So definitely better match than we would have probably expected when you saw this on paper. 6.5 out of 10 for me. Just a quality tag team contest. The next match has Sami Zayn, the conspiracy theory version, going up against Kevin Owens, a rivalry as old as time. These two, KP, for those listeners that don't know, obviously you're a huge Sami Zayn fan, so I am curious to see kind of what you thought of this conspiracy theory version of Sami Zayn, and obviously the more important part, what you think of this match. Obviously, these two guys usually go hell to leather. Was this an exception, or was this just as good?
So yeah, for those that don't know me overly well here, this is like arguably a dream match for me. WrestleMania between Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, like that is like something that I just absolutely live for. I've loved their past meetings, over the years. They tend to deliver an absolutely classic contest whenever they step into the ring with one another. And yeah, this one had a little bit of an outside element as well, with Logan Paul being like a special guest from Sami Zayn. You mentioned the conspiracy theorist and Sami. Obviously, Sami is my favorite main roster guy and has been for some time now. And in my opinion, this conspiracy theorist side of Sami Zayn is the second best version of Sami that we've ever seen. Bloodline does pip it, but I think this one's hilarious and a lot of fun to watch as well. And notably, compared to his match the year before with Daniel Bryan, that one I absolutely hated. Couldn't stand it because Sami didn't really offer a match against Daniel Bryan. This one, still a heel, still going down that route, but delivered a absolutely clinical contest with Kevin Owens. Obviously, these guys are very good friends. They have been for a long period of time. The chemistry is off the charts between these two, and it's just a phenomenal matchup between both men, as I would have expected, and they delivered absolutely 100%. It was great. It was pretty physical, hard hitting, a showcase of wrestling maneuvers from both men in an extremely back and forth matchup. Solid contest. Nothing really went wrong. Maybe my only slight downside is that it was a little short. It could have maybe been a bit longer, but maybe that's just me wanting to see more because these guys are two of my favorites. Maybe, perhaps. But yeah, towards the end of the contest, after a pretty hellacious brawl between both men, a wrestling clinic, if you will, Sami hits a Helluva Kick onto Kevin Owens, and sort of like paying homage to their Battleground of 2016 meeting, Sami holds him up, looks for a second Helluva Kick, but instead gets super kicked by Kevin Owens. Kevin then follows up with a stunner onto Sami Zayn to get the victory in this contest. Post-match, we do see Logan Paul consoling Sami Zayn at first before he then turns his back on him. Zayn gets shoved to the mat and sort of just leaves the ring out of pure frustration, leaving Logan in there to celebrate with Kevin Owens, as far as he's aware he is anyway. He holds the hand up of Kevin Owens, who looks absolutely disgusted the fact that he has his hand held up by Logan. And he then just sort of like plays Logan for a fall, brings him in for almost a handshake, whatever, and instead kicks him in the gut, hits a stunner, and Kevin Owens celebrates his WrestleMania victory, as well as taking down Logan Paul on the WrestleMania stage. I love this one. Brilliant. As I've already said, I kind of glazed it because these two are like two of my all-time faves. And yeah, I just absolutely loved everything they did in this matchup. The Logan Paul references and like, you know, elements weren't too heavily there, so that was quite nice. They showed the camera on him a few times at ringside, but besides that, it was pretty just simple here and there. So I'm alright with this. Didn't take away anything from the matchup whatsoever. 8.5 out of 10 I gave it. It's not the best match that I've seen them perform against each other in, but it was still pretty damn good. Nick, what did you make of this one? How does Sami and Kevin fare for you? The conspiracy theorist gimmick. Did you like that side of Sami Zayn? That documentary never even got released. I feel like there's something corrupt there, but maybe that's just me. What did you make of this match on the WrestleMania stage with a little bit of Logan Paul on the side?
I thought you kind of hit it perfectly there with the Logan Paul bit. I think he adds enough, and I think he is pretty entertaining just as, you know, on the mic. And so he wouldn't even have a mic, so he was just being shown kind of his reactions, and I thought those were well enough. And for the actual match, though, well, I guess before that, Sami Zayn conspiracy theory, Sami Zayn, yeah, I enjoyed it. It was effective. It was annoying, but you know, it was supposed to be. So it was entertaining. Non-stop spots for the actual match here, though. These two never disappoint. I don't think this is an exception. Yeah, in the end, KO hits that stunner after reminding Zayn, you know, that you did this, you know, you made me do this to get the win. It's always personal with these two. And I did kind of have the same feeling that maybe this match was supposed to be longer. Maybe this got cut a bit of time, only 9 minutes. I think this probably could have gotten twice the match or twice the length. And we're probably talking like an all time, probably. If you give these two guys that much time on the Mania stage, I have no doubt that they would put on an absolute clinic. So that's my kind of only downside there. I did give this one an 8.5 out of 10, though. Still a very, very quality performance, as you kind of allude to. Not the best we've seen from them, but definitely up there and very, very quality contest. KO doing his best Stone Cold impression after the match. Logan kind of pretending to celebrate with him and then giving him the stunner for his troubles. Love that. Love KO. Miss him. Hope he comes back soon. But yeah, 8.5 out of 10 for me. A very quality contest here. The next matchup of the evening has Sheamus going up against Matt Riddle, who is defending his United States Championship. KP, a very nice blend of styles here. What did you make of this one?
Yeah, you already hit it on the head there. Definitely a blend of styles here in this one. I think you sort of do see Riddle's athleticism really shine here, mixed with the technical ability as well. That then sort of obviously, like, you know, just collaborates with Sheamus's hard-hitting power, and it makes for a really enjoyable contest. It's a great match that almost feels like a fight, and we've mentioned that in a previous match already on this video. This one definitely fills that category for me as well. It's a really fast-paced match too. It doesn't really slow down. Both men perform really, really well. Unfortunately, there is one botch towards the end of the contest, which does take away a little bit, but honestly, doesn't stop it from being a really solid and enjoyable, fun match. Like I say, it's hard-hitting, and they just brawl between the two of them for the entire matchup. It's a big fight, and you know, the United States Championship being the prize here. I think they do a really good job of selling that as the rewards here for this contest. Towards the end of the matchup, we do see Riddle looking to hit a springboard moonsault, but a really, really nice bit of capitalization here from Sheamus as Riddle is mid-flight going to hit this moonsault. Sheamus bro kicks Riddle to get the victory here, busts him open in the process. Riddle is bleeding from the mouth afterwards, a bit of a stare down between the two men. And yeah, it makes for a really iconic moment, to be fair. But what a reversal it was from Sheamus. What a way to counter and to capitalize. Hits that big bro kick, and yeah, the next thing Riddle knows is lights out and he's lost his championship. So yeah, a fight that came to an end after a really good moment. Yeah, I think Riddle's underrated. I really do. I always liked him from an in-ring performance-wise. You can say whatever you want about him as a person outside the ring, but just when he was in those ropes, I loved what he did. I always found him really enjoyable and fun. His character was great, the gimmick and stuff, and just generally speaking, was extremely talented as a grappler and as an in-ring technician. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoy Riddle matches, always have done. And yeah, Sheamus is obviously one of those guys that's always going to deliver a solid performance. I think they both did here, to be fair. 8 out of 10 I gave this one. Had a really good feel to it, had a great flow, and what a finish as well from from Sheamus hitting that almost unexpectedly out of nowhere. What did you rate this one, Nick? Does Riddle sort of like tick the boxes that he ticks for me? Do you sort of see a different side of him? And what do you make about the finish here in this matchup? Just generally speaking, how did you feel the match flowed?
Yeah, Riddle was a great talent. His character work was hilarious, and his in-ring work was pretty good too. Actually, I would say pretty amazing. And just his unique style, the barefoot bit. I know it's been done before, but always like just everything about him was unique, and I really liked what he brought to the table. Unfortunately, it didn't work out in the end, but for the time that we did get with him, I always look forward to his matches. This one was no exception. Yeah, you kind of mentioned the ropes there doing their best part to ruin some moments over the weekend. It made it work. Sheamus made it work. But just couldn't prevent this one from being a quality contest that it was. That Brogue kick, as mid flip to Riddle, busted him open pretty good as well. It's just a great quality contest, a nice blend of styles. What more can you ask for? Our new United States champion is Sheamus. Sheamus just, especially towards the latter parts of his career, just knows how to put on a banger. Hence why he came up with the phrase banger after banger. This one is another one. Gave this one an 8 out of 10 as well. Just a really quality contest here. The next match of the evening has Apollo Crews going up against Big E, who is defending his Intercontinental Championship in a Nigerian drum fight, which is essentially an extreme rules match with some musical instruments at ringside. KP, thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm being correct here, but is this the only Nigerian drum fight in WWE history? I think it might be, to be fair. A very unique matchup, but maybe not unique at the same time because it is just a street fight, extreme rules, whatever you want to call it. Basically a no disqualification, anything goes contest, but it's not bad. It's quite fun. It was a bit of a quick burst that could have been longer for sure. Could have highlighted both men a bit more to a grander scale, I think. But both men were pretty aggressive in the time that they were allowed to sort of like deliver in this contest. Especially with kendo sticks, we saw some absolute wallops from both men with those kendos against each other quite early on in the contest. Went sort of like into the mid stages. The kendo sticks were a recurring weapon here in this one. And yeah, it could have honestly just done with 5 more minutes, maybe. The finish seemingly unexpected out of nowhere. I don't know if it felt a bit rushed, but it did feel very quick paced, the whole thing. And I don't mind quick pace matches when it's this sort of stipulation because it does sort of like keep the intensity really high. But because it's obviously quite short, it does sort of bring a sense of, what could have been if you gave it that extra bit of time. So maybe a little bit of wanting more from this one and a bit disappointed because it was quite so short. In the end of the matchup, we do see Apollo looking to frog splash Big E through a table, but instead, Big E avoids it. He gets off the table, and Apollo goes crashing through it himself. Seemingly, with the match won, Big E goes for the big ending, hits it onto Apollo Crews, and then we see the debut of who is later to be revealed as Commander Aziz. Aziz takes out E with a sort of like Samoan spike style move, very similar to what Solo Sikoa uses now. And he follows that up with a choke slam before then Aziz just places Apollo's body onto Big E's. And that gives Apollo Crews the win and crowns him as the new Intercontinental Champion. So yeah, it's not even done because Apollo won the matchup himself, but because Aziz comes in, changes the entire situation, and just basically grants Apollo the win because that's what he says is happening. If Big E's reign comes to an end, and he goes on a very big run, coming up in the next few months, which is awesome for him. But yeah, in terms of Commander Aziz, his debut, what a way to get started, I suppose, making a massive impact, and Apollo Crews becomes the Intercontinental Champion because of his involvement. But yeah, like I said, just needed more time. It was good while it lasted. It was high intensity. It was quick, but it just needed a bit more. I gave it a 7 out of 10. I liked it, but just wanted more from it. Nick, what did you make of this one? Did you want more from this one as well? It was quite quick. It was pretty brutal, though. Did you like the fast-pacedness of the matchup? And what about Commander Aziz basically dictating the end?
Yeah, that overflowing bucket of needed more time throughout this WrestleMania series. Obviously, this is the 37th one, so it is overflowing, and this is absolutely one that needs to be put in there. Apollo put Biggie in the hospital by dropping some steel steps onto him, kind of in the build to this. And so for Apollo to get the win here, and what genuinely was a pretty happy Mania overall, this was one of those exceptions. Yeah. I didn't like the ending. I didn't like Aziz coming in and basically winning the match for him. I understand kind of why it was done. I just felt like it was a bit disrespectful to Big E and kind of the build for this. It kind of didn't really flow in the same way that I kind of thought it would. But regardless, he hits the choke slam and puts Cruz on top of him, and that's kind of the win. So I think at least 5 more minutes for these guys to go a little bit longer in the ring, and then maybe I would have been a little more receptive to that finish. But for kind of the way it was, and only being under 7 minutes, I just felt like it was probably one of those matches that got cut a bit, and I think it could have been better, obviously, with 5 more minutes. So I did not like this one. I guess one of 5.5 out of 10, which maybe does feel a bit harsh, but the ending just felt super lazy to me, and I just feel like Big E does deserve better. With that, let's get to the next contest, which has the Nightmare Rhea Ripley going up against the Empress of Tomorrow, Asuka, for the Raw Women's Championship. KP, thoughts on this one?
Yeah, pretty decent matchup. One that sort of tipped the scales, throughout, basically, just going back and forth. Both women really having a good chance to sort of like show what they can do in the ring. Rhea Ripley's still very early in her main roster stages here. Sort of very similar to that to Bianca Belair. Obviously, she made her sort of presence known on the WrestleMania stage, beating Sasha in night one. And that's sort of similar to what Rhea Ripley does here as well. She goes toe to toe with Asuka, who had a pretty lengthy reign after taking the championship from Becky Lynch via pregnancy and the Money in the Bank cash-in situation. Yep. We do then see this matchup on the WrestleMania stage, and Ripley's win is quite a impressive one, to be fair. She goes toe to toe with Asuka in a very clinical matchup, very back and forth, like I said. The match consists heavily of striking styles, both women hitting each other really, really hard in parts, and honestly, just not a bad match overall. But it just didn't move me, unfortunately. It had a good flow, don't get me wrong, like it felt good to watch, but at the same time, it didn't really get me on the edge of my seat. It didn't really sort of like capture me in a sense that, I was appreciating an absolute classic matchup. Like we saw with Sasha and Bianca in the night previously. This one didn't really hit those heights, and it was still good. It had a lot of quality, but for me, just I don't know. Maybe the finish felt a little bit flat as well. I remember watching this one live at the time as well, thinking maybe it was a little bit underwhelming, but it's still pretty good. Like maybe I was a little bit too harsh when I first watched it, but trying to sort of like look at it from a professional stance here now, level-headedness, it is good. It's just not exceptional. It's a solid match, but nothing better than that, I think. Towards the end of the contest, we do see Asuka hitting a couple of kicks to Rhea's chest, who sort of like knelt down on the mat after a pretty hellacious matchup prior to this. Rhea demands more from Asuka before she then bounces off the ropes to hit a bigger kick. Rhea evades that kick before then hitting a riptide, very quickly transitioning into that riptide and planting Asuka down to go for the 1-2-3 and to become your new Raw Women's Champion. The finish was, yeah, like I said, just maybe a little bit out of nowhere and felt a little flat, but besides that, I did like it. It's just, it could have been a lot better, in my opinion. Didn't really move me, unfortunately. Whether you agree with that one, Nick, I'm interested to see what you made of this one. But I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. It wasn't bad. Like, it wasn't a terrible matchup or anything like that. Far from it. But it just, yeah, it wasn't something that I think these ladies, I think they could have done better, is what I'm trying to say. I think it could have been a bigger matchup and a bigger performance. Maybe the time thing was a bit of a problem. Maybe we could have had a couple more minutes here to sort of like really bring some drama up in those closing stages. But it just almost felt like they were going through the motions, and then the match was over after one finisher. So yeah, a bit disappointed personally. What did you make of this one, Nick? Though, did you agree that it did have a little bit of a flat finish to it, or did you like this one for what it was? Think it did a good job, and it was a deserved crowning moment for Rhea Ripley. Her first women's championship on the main stage.
Perhaps the fault of this one maybe being that it was obviously going to be compared to Saturday's main event and that of Bianca and Sasha. Maybe that does kind of play a part. But regardless, for the match itself, the dueling Let's Go Asuka, Let's Go Rhea chance crowd is very split here. This match was hard hitting, as you would expect from the two women here. I think maybe expectations do play a part here, as we know, today, we know that Rhea is obviously very capable of putting on a very good match, as is Asuka. But, Asuka getting some pretty nasty kicks here. And Rhea challenges her for some more there towards the end, and then Rhea avoids to hit the riptide. I thought that was a good ending. I just felt like it was a bit sudden, and obviously Asuka probably could have dealt been dealt a few more finishers, or at least one more, being the biggest stage of them all, and what I think could have been a bit longer. I don't know if it's even the longer bit. Obviously, this match was 13 minutes long, so it wasn't exactly short, but I think probably you give this one 20 minutes or maybe get to the finish a bit sooner. I think you probably would have been off a bit better. Um, and it kind of conflicted there too, because obviously Rhea is newer to the roster as well. So with her winning on one riptide, obviously that helps keep her finisher strong and keeps her strong in general. So I kind of understand that side of it too. Maybe just having dish out some more offense before that. But yeah, something about this one, I don't know if it's just a comparison to Bianca and Sasha or what. But the second passing of the torch, if you will, from Oscar to Rhea here, I thought that was a great moment. Unfortunately, something about this match just wasn't quite right. And maybe it was just Rhea, just not quite ready. They didn't have confidence in her yet on the main roster. Maybe that plays a part. But yeah, it felt like this could have been better. Maybe that's just kind of what we've come to know from both of these two women, just not quite living up to the hype. We see that with a lot of people, and maybe this is just one of those instances. So I gave this one a 7 out of 10. Could have been better, but was solid for what it was. The main event of WrestleMania Sunday. The finish of this one has always lived rent free in my head, so I can only imagine kind of how you perceive this one. Obviously, this involves your favorite of all time, obviously referring to Edge, who is this year's Royal Rumble winner. He is going up against Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns, who is defending his Universal Championship with his right hand man, Jey Uso, before his main event days, and special counsel Paul Heyman. KP, what'd you make of main event of WrestleMania Sunday?
Yeah, this one is quite a controversial ending, to be fair, and it's one of those spoke about, in quite some sense. I'll go a bit more into that when I get there, but let's start from the basics. It was a fun main event. It had that really big fight feel to it. The build for this one was quite unique in the sense that we have sort of Daniel Bryan being screwed by Roman Reigns in the build-up, Reigns having won the Rumble, challenging Edge to a matchup, and there's sort of a bit of a back and forth between Bryan and Roman as they sort of like get into this part. The sort of like way that Edge gets involved and sort of brings the fight to Daniel Bryan, getting a bit jealous, him wanting his moment, and then it all just sort of like transpires into the triple threat matchup, which goes down quite nicely, to be fair. All three men have opportunities to get the win in this one. Sort of gives the match a vibe that anyone could have won at any given moment here. We see some submissions locked in from both Edge and Daniel Bryan. Even at one point, at the same time on Roman Reigns. So yeah, quite unique in the sense of like the sort of attacks that were done in this bit. But we do see Jey Uso playing a big part. He gets involved very early doors. Immediately as the contest starts, essentially, Roman sends Bryan out the ring, and Jey just deals with Daniel Bryan. And then we do see him sort of like playing dividends and taking out Edge at one point. But Edge does fight back, hits a execution onto the steel steps, planting Jey Uso, taking him out, and he's sort of like escorted out of the contest here by some security and officials or whatever, medics, whatever you want to call them. Then we see the match, go ahead as planned, triple threat contest. It does get quite hellacious. There's a lot going on here. Chairs being used quite frequently. There's even a rod from one of the steel chairs that really nicely is just broken off at one point after a bit of a tug of war. It's a really quick thing as well, so it doesn't look like it's forced or anything. And that sort of get used via the crossface from Edge. He sort of like just uses the bar, just sort of like pops it into Roman's mouth and just like really wrenches his head back on that crossface submission. Very close to tapping out, but Daniel Bryan making the save. And yeah, we see steel steps also being used as well. Like I mentioned, the announce table gets put through. Daniel Bryan is the recipient of that one as Roman Reigns power bombs him through it. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into this one, and we do then get to the questionable finish, which is what I was talking about earlier. So let's go into that right here, right now. Edge hits Bryan with a concerto. He has Reigns set up for one as well, and goes to sort of like turn his attention to it to attempt to hit him with that concerto. Jey Uso does come back in after a lengthy spell away on the sidelines, and he gets back in to distract Edge. Edge does capitalize though, hits Jey with a spear, but as he goes to turn his attention back over to Roman Reigns, he then gets speared by Roman before he then hits Edge with a concerto. So at this point, Bryan and Edge both been hit by concerto. They are dead to rights, and because of that, Roman literally said before he was gonna smash him, stack him, and pin him. And that's exactly what he did. He lays Edge onto Daniel Bryan, who is still motionless, and he pins both of them to get the victory here in the main event of WrestleMania Night 2. I don't know how I feel about it. On one hand, it's kind of disrespectful towards Bryan and Edge in the sense that these are two big names and Roman pins them both. So I get that side of the coin. However, I do also think that because of what Roman Reigns, goes on to become after this, it does make him look incredibly badass and it shapes up a really solid run. I don't care what anyone says. I loved the reign of Roman Reigns, to be honest. But in terms of this particular moment, I think it shapes him up for a really solid start. And yeah, it's quite cool to see. To be fair, it does come with that sort of double-edged sword though, because you can sort of argue that it is very disrespectful. Probably wasn't the right call. Maybe they could have done it in a slightly different way or whatever. But yeah, it's certainly a talking point, that's for sure. But I don't think it takes away from the matchup. You can love or hate the finish, but the match itself, in my opinion, was still very solid up until that point. There was so much going on. It was carnage. It was chaotic. It was hellacious. There was outside interference. Everyone sort of had a chance to win. And then Roman Reigns got that dub in the end. So 9 out of 10 for me personally. I loved it. I thought it was a really good main event. Did very, very well at telling that story between all three guys here in this one. Yeah, just a questionable finish. Perhaps you like it, perhaps you don't. And that's absolutely fine, whichever way you look at it. Nick, what do you think? Do you like the finish? I know it's topical, but what are your thoughts on that one? How do you rate the matchup itself? Roman kicks off his his WrestleMania main event of this sort of run with the championship. What'd you make of it?
Yeah, a quite chaotic way to start. Obviously, Jey Uso causing a ton of chaos outside of the ring. I'm glad that Edge kind of took care of him, at least for now, because that was getting old real quick at the beginning here. Once Jey is disposed of, we get into the actual match. The Daniel Bryan getting powerbombed through the announce table. That's always a fun spot. Roman celebrating the eating a vicious spear from Edge. I thought that was great as well. The yes lock crossface combination with the chair in Roman's mouth. What a moment that was. Didn't last too long though. Obviously, DB starts to attack Edge after that. This is awesome chants echoed throughout Raymond James Stadium, and Edge dishes out another spear to both Roman and Daniel Bryan, and then goes to Roman to get the pin. And DB somehow makes a miraculous recovery to come back and pull out the ref. So that's kind of Edge's breaking point. He starts pummeling both guys here with chair shots, and even a concerto on Daniel Bryan. Then once again, Jey Uso enters the fray. Unfortunately, spears Edge. Roman Reigns then kind of takes it from there, hits a concerto on Edge, and then like I said, one of those moments I will just never forget because I was just my jaw was on the floor to pen two talent, just any two talents, honestly, on the main roster. But for those two talents to be Edge and Daniel Bryan of all people, who are both main event talents from their respective era and their respective time period, two of the biggest stars in WWE history, to pen them like that. Yeah, like it's definitely a double-edged sword in that I don't love that. And I didn't love the Jey Uso interference as much as it was. And kind of, I think if you're going to go that route, you don't need Jay. I think just have Roman be dominant. So I think that does take a bit away from it. But you cannot argue that that obviously does kick off one of the most dominant heel performances in the history of WWE, and that of Roman, like it or hate it, felt it went too long or not. This does kind of kickstart that, and so you have to argue it is effective. Just I don't think it was 100% necessary to depend both guys like that. But yeah, look at the results, knowing what we do now. You have to say it worked to some extent. So for the actual rating, I gave this one a 9 out of 10. Yeah, it's super fun main event, despite the ending being controversial. But hindsight being 2020, it was effective. So make of that what you will. KP, WrestleMania Sunday now in the books. WrestleMania 37 now in the books. From you, can we get your night 1 rating as well as your night 2 rating, your highlights of each, and then obviously an overall rating? And we will wrap up this 14 match WrestleMania 37.
This is a bit weird for me because I think when you look at the shows here, it's kind of a strange one because you don't really have many matches that were terrible. Obviously, you look at WrestleMania nights in the past, you've normally got one or two that are pretty damn bad, don't really have their rightful place on the card, and are very questionable in that sense. For this particular one, I mean, looking at night 1 specifically here, my lowest rating that I gave it was a 5.5. That was that of the Raw Tag Team title match. Um, I mean, that was a coming moment of age moment for Omos on the grand stage. So like, his debut, it was a moment in itself. So even that had a bit of a moment there. So I feel like when it comes to like the other matches, they were all like 6 and up. Like they're quite solid, especially Bianca and Sasha being, my standout across the entire weekend. Just an absolutely enjoyable contest, was tremendous and brilliant, like I've already mentioned. Um, but overall, my night one rating comes to a 7 out of 10. That's an average of all the matches put together. Night two, then obviously we do have Randy Orton and The Fiend, which is my low point of the night because it was, what it was, like I mentioned. But then my highlight of the night was absolutely going to be the main event, which would, was that triple threat contest. So what strikes me as quite interesting here is both main event matches are the highest rated matches on the show, which is how it's meant to be. But normally we don't see that. So that's quite nice. They nailed that on the head, which was great. Some cool matches in between as well. We did see Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn throw down a really fun matchup as well as some other decent matches across the course of the night. But despite that 4 out of 10, like you've got literally the next lowest is a 7. So there were a lot of higher rated matches for me personally. My average of night 2 comes out as a 7.5 out of 10. So average across both nights is 7.25. So yeah, it actually is on the upper echelon of the WrestleManias in terms of my overall rating based on all the matches to put together. But I didn't really get that when I was watching it, so it's quite surprising. Maybe I was surprised by myself with how good it was. Maybe I sort of underestimated it when I was watching it. But look back at the averages, it comes out being very, very solid. So yeah, for what it's worth, it's a pretty good WrestleMania overall, and is on the upper echelon of this project so far. So yeah, not many more to go, but this sits near the very top of all the ones so far for me personally. Nick, I think you had a few matches that were higher rated than me. We had a bit of differences here and there. How do your ratings differ for me, and where did they sort of rank in the grand scheme of things for yourself?
I did have a few matches that were higher, and then I had a few matches that were lower. I think it kind of balanced each other out. Night one got a 7.5 for me. Obviously, the highlights for me being Seth Rollins and Cesaro, and then, of course, that main event, Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair. Night two, Sunday, had a 6.7 for me. So I think we kind of flopped our opinions of night one, night two. Sammy and Kevin obviously being a highlight, and then Seth, or excuse me, Daniel Bryan, Edge, and Roman, the regardless of the ending, still a great main event. And I thought you kind of put that really well there. Main events being the best match on the card. What a concept, right? One that WWE does tend to struggle with, and I think they get it right both two nights, and just a couple torches being passed. Obviously, didn't love the Oscar Rhea match as much, but still great to see this kind of new talent come up, win titles. Love to see that from them, and then kind of building the almost godlike persona of Roman. Obviously, that's kind of born here. I think definitely gets pushed off here quite nicely. But yeah, overall 7.1, and like I like night one better than night two, and it felt like it was pretty big variance there. But the rating doesn't really dictate that. But I just thought the night one was immensely better, at least in my head. But still, 7.1 overall, definitely probably top 10 WrestleMania when we all get done with this series. And I can't wait to do that. I can't wait to go back and make a top 10 list or best match list. And we absolutely will, because we put in this much time. We're going to milk it for all it's worth, if you will. But yeah, 7.1 out of 10 will definitely be a top 10 WrestleMania for me. 37, I don't think gets the respect it deserves outside of a couple of matches. Most of them hover around 6. Outside of the one match that kicked off night two, a very solid across the board WrestleMania, and a ton of fun. And just like that, we have 4 WrestleManias left of our WrestleMania series. It's crazy that we are already to this point. It's gone by slowly at times, depending on the WrestleMania, but it's been a lot of fun. This one was one that gets put into those ladder buckets. This was a ton of fun. And so looking forward to that. But enough from us here at the push. What did you all make of WrestleMania 37? Did you like night one better or night two better? Which matches did you like best? Which matches did you like worse? And why was it Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton? Would love to hear from you in the comments below. As always, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button as well. That does help us out over here at the push. And yeah, until next time, this has been the push with Nick and KP. We'll see you soon. Take care.